Hi everyone, Brianne here with my ABA mentor, and for today's training, we're going to be talking about ABA ethics and the abuse of power. So to start, let's just talk about what exactly do we mean by abuse. Verb is defined as use of something to bad effect or for a bad purpose, as in to misuse. And as a noun, the improper use of something. And this is from the Oxford Dictionary. So we also need to define what we're talking about in respect to power and authority because they do go hand in hand. And so, power as a noun, the capacity or ability to direct or influence the behavior of others or the course of events. And what is the definition of authority is also a noun, the power or right to give orders, make decisions, and enforce obedience. So keep these definitions in mind as we are going through this training because you will start to see how this becomes important in understanding our roles and our responsibilities in the field of ABA. So, the first thing to understand is really that there is a hierarchy of power and authority in our clinical practice. And this is a top down. This is for starting with the business owners at the top and going down to directors and then down to behavior analysts and assistant analysts and then to the direct staff. So this may look different just depending on the hierarchy of your own organization, but this is kind of the basic structure that is out there and that we see. And you may also hold dual roles. So you may be a behavior analyst, but you also may be the business owner, or you may be the behavior analyst and the director. And so really just kind of finding where you fit, but this is the general hierarchy that is out there. So, how do we engage in power and authority in ABA? And we're going to look at how each role has engages in power and authority. And so, this first one is business owners. And business owners, they establish operations and create and uphold the mission of the organization. They establish and maintain the culture and the reputation of the organization, and then they are responsible for expanding the business. And so there is lots of power and authority in each one of these areas. And really, each one of these can be expounded on in great detail as to how this actually comes to be. And as an example, just establishing the operations of the organization, you are really making the rules and you are setting the precedent of how things are going to work and who's going to be responsible for what, and then also creating ways to hold people accountable for all of those roles and responsibilities. And so, in each one of these areas, this person, this business owner, really holds a very high level of power and authority for the organizations in our field. And one of the things that is really important is that this doesn't really make a difference whether or not this business owner is a behavior analyst or not, because what we're really talking about is how that individual is using their power and authority to create this in this entity and really establishing how the services are going to be provided and how people are going to find the services. And that is independent of whether or not the business owner is a BCBA or not. They hold the same level of responsibility and power and authority in this area. So the next level here are the behavior analysts. And so the behavior analysts really hold a lot of power and authority in our field. And a lot of that has to do with how the behavior analyst is engaging with the families and engaging with the staff. And so the treatment planning itself is a major area of power and authority, as well as clinical recommendations and parent training. And so when you have a parent coming to you wanting ABA services, you are holding the responsibility of providing the best ABA services that you can for that family and for that client. And what you're saying and what you're recommending and what you're doing and how you are doing it is communicating a lot about our field. It's communicating a lot about ABA in general. And you are engaging in, I am the authority here that knows what they're talking about, and I know what's the best interest of your child. And when families are looking at us, they hold us at that level of power and authority and saying, oh, I need to listen to what this person is recommending and what this person is saying, because I want my child to get better. And they are coming to you for advice and treatment, with the hope of improvement of their child's quality of life. And that is a heavy place of power and authority to be in, and should be really held with a high regard and with a high level of responsibility. The behavior analysts are also have power and authority in the assistant analysts that they supervise. Their supervised field work for new staff or becoming BCBAs, and staff training as well. And so, whatever that BCBA is teaching to that individual, whether they are a student becoming a behavior analyst, or a student becoming or an assistant analyst who is new to the field, whatever they are communicating and how they're communicating and how they're training is how those services will be delivered. And that becomes really important when we're talking about quality of services. And they are really responsible, and have that authority where that RBT doesn't know anything, or that parent doesn't know anything. And they're saying, oh, this is what my behavior analyst said to do. This is what I'm going to do, because they don't know anything else. And they are trusting in you as that authority to give them the right advice and the right way of doing things. They also have power and authority in their staff communications and as one face of the company, and as well as future staffing and reviews. And they can also uphold or tear down reputations. So, from the position of a business owner, the behavior analysts really hold a lot of weight in how our businesses are being put out to the public, because they are the person who is interacting with the family. And if they have poor ABA clinical practices, or they have questionable ethics, that is going to be a reflection on the company as a whole. And so how they are communicating with people, they can communicate with future staff. If you don't think that there are people out there asking about working for your company, or working with the company that you are with, asking for advice, you are very, very sadly mistaken, because people want to share their experiences and people want to work for good companies. And so it's really important that you understand that they are representing you, or as a business owner, they're representing the field in a way that is appropriate. And so that is a lot of power to be holding, which, if you remember, is influence, right? So, how are they influencing those around them, the staff, the parents, the school staff that they're working with, all of those people? They have influence, and it's important for everyone to know, the level of influence that they have, and to use that influence appropriately. The next, very similar, is the assistant behavior analyst. So everything that I mentioned before in respect to their treatment planning, their clinical recommendations, how they are doing parent training, how they're communicating to staff, what they're training staff in, making sure that all of those things are in engagement of that power and that authority, and making sure that what they are training and what they're communicating and how they're conducting themselves clinically is really important to us upholding the level of services that we should be providing to families. And the next one for direct line staff. If you don't think that direct line staff have power and authority and influence over people, I'm glad that you're here to talk about it, because they may be one of the most influential people in your organization and in this field, because these individuals, one, are very vocal. They will quit. They are transient. They go from company to company, and they know really the true ins and outs of the ABA field. And they're responsible for implementing our treatment plans. They are the person that the parent wants to most often communicate with, because they're there the most often. And they build that relationship, they build that bond, and they are essentially a very big part of the face of the company. And they should be trained well, and they should be always communicating the values of ABA and the high quality of services that we provide and why we provide them, and really just being that consistent person for the family. They also are heavily influencing towards future staffing and reviews, because they talk to their peers, and their peers are other RBTs. And so if you're working in an environment with center-based services where people get very close and they're very tight-knit teams, you are familiar with how much our direct line staff can influence the team, can influence services, parents coming in and asking questions, and your direct line staff trying to field those questions. And so this is another form of power and authority, because people are listening, and that power is influencing those around them and the families that they are working with. So really, all in all, everyone working in the ABA field is a representation of the field of applied behavior analysis. And there may be more people in your organization or more people that you work alongside, your colleagues. Really, everyone holds a piece of the power and authority of the field of behavior analysis and our goal of helping families that we work with and the kids that we work with. So it's really important for us as a field to, one, recognize that we have this power and authority, and then work towards how we are going to use it in a positive way. So the first thing that we're going to look at is the forms of power abuse in medical practice, because we need to know what we shouldn't do in order to know what we should do, and then how to do it. And so the first one is going to be exploitation. And exploitation defined the action or fact of treating someone unfairly in order to benefit from their work, and also the fact or making use of a situation to gain unfair advantage for oneself. So in our field, how can this happen? What does this even look like? So this could be something as much as under scheduling or over recommendation of therapy hours. So if you know that your client needs 20 hours a week, and you say, oh, I have one RBT that's available for 1 hour this week, and I know that really this isn't clinically effective or making any difference to this family, but we need to capture this hour. that is an exploitation. And it is just basically unfairly getting benefit without actually benefiting the person. So this can also be knowing and using people's ignorance and not allowing contribution to their medical care. So what I mean by this is families only know what a person who is trained and in a place of power and authority tell them. And if you have a family who they don't know anything about ABA, they don't know anything about quality of service, they don't know anything about what is recommended or not recommended, or how many hours they really need or hours that they don't need, they don't know. So it really falls on the professional who is in that place of power and authority to be providing that information to them and not withholding that information and just saying, oh, okay, well, they don't know any better. So we're just going to do this 1 hour of therapy and call it good because they don't know otherwise. And so we're going to send that person and, provide our services. And that can also be on the other end and say, wow, this kiddo, really doesn't need 40 hours a week of therapy, but that's what we're recommending. And that's what our practice does. And so it doesn't really matter if the parent knows that that is incorrect or correct because this is what we're doing. And so using what that person doesn't know in order to get a unfair advantage. And providing a lower quality of service to one client but not another. And so this can be something that happens internally for lots of different reasons. Maybe it's a cultural reason that your staff have an issue with the client, but you really want to look out for, okay, I provide really good services to this family, and then I really dislike going to this house and for XYZ reason. And so my services are going to be subpar over here. Okay. And staff working outside of roles and responsibilities. You want to be really clear that you are upholding what your roles and responsibilities are. And if you are asking people or if you are being asked to do things that are outside of that, you need to make sure that there is a good exchange between you and the company or vice versa, however it's coming about, to make sure that that one person or the other is not benefiting from their work unfairly. Or, this can even happen with saying like, okay, I'm going to assign way too big of caseload for someone, and we're just going to stack all of these kids on an individual that can't necessarily provide high quality services. Okay. This can also be unpaid staff training or work responsibilities. And these can sneak up on people because you don't think about it until really after the fact when you have a complaint about it. And they say, oh, can you just make this material? Oh, can you just, make sure and close for the night? Oh, can you do this? And that doesn't necessarily isn't necessarily reflected in their pay or in their salary. And so you do those tiny little things over time, or someone finds them being the one that's like, oh, I always do this, I always do that, I always, do all these things. And I was like, I'm not getting paid to do this at the end of the day. And that is a big issue. And also lack of reimbursement funds for clients and staff. So you should never expect someone to do something for a company that is not able to be reimbursed if it's a true company expense. And, I'm going to say that teachers, because I am a former teacher, kind of get the worst of this. They're like, okay, buy your own materials, buy your own pencils, and oh, all your kids need binders, so you have to go out and buy all these binders. But it's like, whose expense is that really? And in this example, teachers have a good argument to say, no, I can't be paying out of my salary for all of these extra things just to be able to do my job, when really it's the responsibility of the organization to give me the tools that I need to do my job. So that is a big one as well. So, another form of power abuse in medical practice is fraud. And of course, this is a hot topic when it comes to billing fraud, is kind of what we all hear about. But fraud is a little bit more broad than that. That is one way that this happens, but it really is an act of deceiving or misrepresenting. And so, how does this happen in our field? This can be working outside of competency without mentorship. And that behavior analyst saying, yes, I'll work, with this client that I have never worked with before and behaviors that I've never worked with before, and I can do it. But I don't have help and I don't have mentorship, and it's outside of what I know. And that being misrepresented to the family and to the client that you are working with. This can also, for the obvious one, being billing for services unperformed. So, this should go without saying. You should never bill for something that you actually didn't do. And, that has caused a huge issue, obviously, in our field with um, fraudulent billing and this and that. So yeah, just like a big no-no. But also, this could be training staff outside of competency. And so, if you're like, assigning staff to do training or taking on trainings, you better be sure that that person is competent in training, because they are in the position of power and authority, providing that training to the staff for that staff to then turn around and disseminate that information or act on or influence their practice based on that information. And if that's coming from a source that doesn't have the correct competency, then that is a misrepresentation of that individual and their expertise in how they are training. And this can also be in obtaining treatment hour authorizations without clinical justification. We talked about that in the last one as well. But this does bleed over into fraud as well, because you're really misrepresenting or making a deceitful claim in saying, oh, this kiddo needs, you know, 40 hours a week of therapy. And I'm just going to use that number as an extreme, but 40 hours a week, and he really only needs 10, but our service model is everyone gets 40 hours. Okay. And that is a misrepresentation and a deceitful way of getting authorization for treatment, for medical services. Another form of power abuse in medical practice is greed. And so, greed, as defined, is an intense and selfish desire for something, especially wealth, power, or food, which is an interesting definition. But how does this happen in our field? Um, Again, obtaining treatment hour authorizations without clinical justification. And the reason that this is on here is because greed comes to your intention and your MO. What is your MO, in these various scenarios? Is it to bill for lots of hours? Is that what your goal is? Again, billing for services unperformed really comes down to, how could this possibly happen? What is your intention behind it? Is it because you're an hourly staff and you need the extra hours, so you're going to add 30 minutes here, add an hour there, and get that on your payroll? And it really comes to, basing decisions solely on accumulation of money, as being the thing that you desire. And, when you are thinking about all of these things, is that the motive for your decision making? And sometimes it's difficult to tweeze out, business and the balance, I guess, between business and clinical services, and the right clinical services, but making sure that you're profitable, and all of these things. And this will come into play one way or another. Everyone will have the thought of like, oh, well, what is the best way to request hours so that I keep my doors open? Okay, that everyone's going to have that thought if they have gone into an ABA practice. Why? Because if we don't keep our doors open, then we don't get to help anybody. But you need to be mindful of, how you're asking that question and how you're answering that question, and making sure that, your decisions aren't made just based on these factors. This can also be clinical treatment based on payer funding sources. So, an example of this would be client A has Medicaid and client B is a private pay. So, because we have a private pay client, I'm going to provide 5 more hours of clinical programming outside of my therapy time because I need that time. And the idea that you are basing your clinical treatment based on who's paying, how much they're paying, and what you're getting in return. And there's a very fine line of that, of what's clinically necessary, what is payable, and what isn't. And making sure that you don't cross the line of, okay, well, they're private pay anyway, so I'll put in an extra hour. And, but otherwise, I wouldn't have necessarily needed that extra hour, if that makes sense. So, another form is arrogance. And so, arrogance is defined as offensive display of superiority or self importance and overbearing pride. So, when you are in a position of power and authority, it can be very easy to fall into a category of arrogance. And, how does that arrogance play out negatively and become an abuse of power? So, this may look like not allowing client and family contributions to their own medical care and saying, well, I'm the supervisor, and or I'm the practice owner, or whatever your position is, and I know what's best for your child. And if you don't engage in XYZ, we are just not going to be able to provide services. Okay. That family and that client has the right to contribute to their medical care. And, you are not the end all be all in clinical recommendations. And so it is important to be able to collaborate and allow families to contribute because they are important and it's their child, or it's them as the individual. So, this can also be unwillingness to collaborate with other professionals. This is a big one when you are saying, okay, I'm just going to do my PECS program how I want to do my PECS program. And then speech, you're going to do your program however you want to do your program. And, mine is better anyway. So, I'm just going to let you do whatever you do for whatever reason. Okay. And being unwilling to come together as a team and say, okay, I have specialties, you have specialties, how can we work on this together? Because at the end of the day, our goal is the same, which is the best interest of the child. And how does that collaboration work? And being open and being willing to work with other people. And this can also be unwillingness to receive constructive criticism. If there's something that you are doing wrong, if there's something that you could be doing better, if someone approaches you and says, hey, I saw this and I'm concerned about it, for XYZ reason, are you able to receive that information for the best interest of our services and for the best interest of the clients that we work with? And if you're not, then you need to ask yourself, am I being arrogant and unable to fulfill the responsibility of the power that I have and the power and the authority that I have, and improve myself and improve my practice? And that goes along with the last one, unwillingness to engage in personal and professional growth because, quote unquote, you know it all. Okay, so there, you'd be surprised how many people may feel that way, and they will say, well, I don't need to do this and I don't need to do that because, I already know what I'm doing. But there's always room for growth. Science is always changing, research is always changing, and it's our responsibility in a position of power and authority to be well versed in the best practices and the most relevant research for the families and clients that we serve. All right, so enough being a Debbie Downer here, but we had to get out of the way so that we know what we don't want to do and how these things play out. So next we're going to do a little, flip the script here and look at how we can use our power positively for what it is that we all want, which is to provide great services for the clients and the families that we service. So I am going to call people out just a little bit because if you haven't heard the phrase, the fish stinks from the head, essentially this means that this is a top-down generally issue. So as the people at the top, being reflect on themselves and making sure that we're doing things ethically and that we are providing the best services that we can and things are structured for us to be successful and that everybody's working in a positive and collaborative environment, that will trickle down from the top. It's very difficult to change things long term in any other way. So yes, I'm calling out the leaders of our field, but it is important because they hold the most power and authority, as we have seen in the hierarchy. So, of course, change and improvement and making sure that we're doing things the right way and we're doing things ethically has to be at all levels, especially at the top. So, positive engagement of power. So, what does this look like? Really, it's about reflecting on your motives with every decision that you are making. And this can be business decisions, clinical decisions, and operations, staff training. In every area, you have to think, why am I doing this? Why is this the right direction? Why am I providing this training? Why am I doing the things that I'm doing, every day? And with the intention of doing things for the right reason and doing things for the best interest of our clients, the best interest of the field, the best interest of every staff member that we work with, all of those things. And another way that we can engage positively is having clear mission and values and upholding them and actually upholding them with our day-to-day decisions. So it's all fine and great when you say, our mission is to provide the best ABA services possible, but then your actions towards that mission and towards that value look very different and doesn't necessarily reflect what the true mission and value is of the organization or the true mission and values of our field, because ABA field has missions and values, and that's to improve the lives of the individuals that we work with, point blank. And so that should definitely be upheld in everything that we are doing. You also need to have personal ethics and values and uphold them as well, because there will be situations where you get in, some sticky situations, and you need to make a decision for yourself as to what your own values are and your own ethics are, and then making the right decisions from there. Another way to engage positively is educate and train. Educate and train, educate and train. I cannot say it enough. To educate people and train people, because people don't know what they don't know. And so we have to take the appropriate time to educate people and train them in all of these different areas so that we know that the people who are disseminating the practice of ABA with our behavior analysts or with our direct staff or even with our parents working with their children at home, that they are doing it responsibly and ethically, and that they are trained enough to actually do a good job and benefit the clients' lives. We also need to engage in personal and professional growth always. And it is our job in a position of power and authority to be growing professionally and personally. And if you're not, then you may need to, think about doing that more often, because, we are a voice of authority and people listen to what we say. And if we are not working on ourselves and we're not working on the profession as a whole, then we're in trouble, because what we're communicating is influencing people around us and influencing the families and influencing the field. And so always being available and willing and open for growth is extremely important. Knowing your limits and your competencies and voicing them. It's really important for you to say, okay, here's what I'm comfortable with, here's what I'm not comfortable with, and if I'm requested to do something that I'm not comfortable with, how can I get help? How can I get mentorship? Who can I go to ask my questions? So that you aren't just left on your own to figure it out, because figuring it out is not good and ethical services. And so we really need to be cognizant of ourselves and what we can and can't do and what we're familiar with. And we don't have to hold the entire responsibility of knowing everything about ABA and every client and every population. It's not possible, nor should it be an expectation. And so it's really important for you to define, what is my specialty, where am I good, at helping people, and then making sure that you're communicating what you do and what you can't do. And if you want to, do something different, that's cool. You can do something different, but make sure that you have training and mentorship to go in that direction and finding the right people to help you get there. Another one will be transparency and communication. So both of these things are very important when you are in a position of power and authority, because again, what we say and what we do has influence. Even right now, what I am saying, whoever watches this video, I'm going to have some form of influence, positively or negatively, on the person who is listening. And so we need to make sure that we have 100% transparency and open to communication with the people that we are in power and authority over, so that we can foster a great relationship and a working relationship with people. And that is how essentially you become a leader and mentor, is that you foster a positive relationship and using your power and authority in a positive way to help people. So the next one, giving and receiving feedback and constructive criticism is really important. So if you're doing something wrong, or if you need some feedback, or someone knows something that you don't know, and they say, hey, I want to tell you about this thing that I specialize in that you don't know, you should be open and staying curious about what it is that you need to know in order to expand your own practice, expand your awareness, expand your specialty, so that you can then use that information to improve your services and a quality of services to our clients. And again, value everyone's thoughts and opinions, because they're all valid. Everyone has their own perspective, their own previous knowledge, their own experiences that they are drawing from, and everybody can learn from each other all the time. And so when you're in a position of power and authority, you want to make sure that you are valuing other people's perspectives, because everyone has blind spots, and everyone has areas in which that they need to improve, and their strengths and weaknesses. And guess what? That's okay, because we're all human, and that is what being human is about. So receiving those thoughts and receiving those opinions, and then saying, oh wow, that was a great idea, or yeah, I understand that, but here's why I did this. So having that dialogue and having that communication is really just for the betterment of the field and ourselves as people who carry this power and authority. So another important area here that we want to talk about is the passing of power and authority in ABA. So it's one thing to know, what power and authority is, how we use it, how does this come up good, how does this come up in a bad way. But then we also want to know, what is this concept of passing power and authority? And, this is something that happens between business owners and behavior analysts, from trainers to staff, and from fieldwork supervisors to student analysts, just as a couple of examples of how this happens. So what exactly do we mean by passing the authority? And this really comes down to the business owner structuring everything that needs to go on to make the business successful, and then passing power and authority to the behavior analyst to implement. And they say, okay, here's how we do this. Here's how we're going to run clinicals. Here's how we're going to write treatment plans. Here's how we're going to do assessments, so on and so forth. And now that behavior analyst is then passed the power and authority to execute those tasks. Okay. And then the same thing happens from that behavior analyst to the staff that they're training. Or if they are supervising fieldwork students, how are they training them and passing that authority on to that new analyst, and what does that look like and what does that entail? So the passing of power and authority happens all the time in an organizational structure, because there has to be a growth process, and there has to be someone who starts the company. And so this then gets disseminated through the organization, and then how things are implemented kind of goes from there. So one thing to really keep at the front of your mind, which is really super important, is that training passes power and authority, but it does not release responsibility. Okay, I'm going to say it again. Training passes power and authority, but it does not release responsibility. Okay, so responsibility moves down the hierarchy. Okay, it does not go up the hierarchy. Okay, so business owners are responsible for the directors, that are responsible for the behavior analysts, that are responsible for the assistants, and so on and so forth, all the way down till we get to the client. Okay, so all of those people in this hierarchy, at the end of the day, from top to bottom, are responsible for the client and for the client's experience, for the client's quality of services, and for the success of the client receiving treatment. And so just because you pass the power and authority, say from a behavior analyst to the assistant, say, okay, I'm your supervising behavior analyst and you are providing ABA services, the behavior analyst cannot sit back and say, oh, well, I'm not responsible for what my assistant analyst does. Well, you're the supervisor and you're the one training that person, and you're the one who is ultimately responsible for the treatment plan. So yes, you are responsible for what that analyst does. And you're also responsible for what that direct staff does, because you better be training your assistant analyst with the right way to train your direct staff, and that direct staff should be implementing things how you want the treatment plan to be done. So yes, you are responsible, and it goes down the hierarchy and it does not go up. So what do I mean by not going up? The client is not responsible for what the behavior analyst does. okay? Because they're at a lower level of the power and authority chain. And so they're also not responsible for what the direct staff does. And if the direct staff provides really bad services or shows up late or leaves early or whatever the case may be, that's not the client's responsibility. That is the responsibility of the people who are higher up on the hierarchy, not them. And so this becomes really important when you are training staff and when you have agreed to train staff, and which is one of the biggest passions that we have here at my ABA Mentor, because we focus on training, is making sure that people know who is responsible, and to not just turn away and say, oh, okay, that was my RBT, that was their fault. Okay, where did they get their training? And where did they get their mentorship? And who is supervising this program? Because you are still responsible as being higher up in the chain. And the same thing goes for business owners and all the way up. So ultimately, business owners are responsible for the experience and the quality of services that client gets in the respect of what their responsibilities are, and making sure that everything is set up for the client's best interest, and people are able to do their jobs, people are able to do a good job, and that will reflect in the quality of services. So clearly, I'm very passionate about this concept. And if you ever really want to get me fired up, we can talk about this all day long. But why is this important to my ABA mentor? Okay, why are we even doing a training on this? Because, what is this about? So one of the most impactful power transfers and power holders in our field are the student behavior analysts. And I'm going to tell you why. Because these people are our future analysts, our future business owners, our future researchers, and essentially the future leaders of our field. And this power transfer is so important, because what we are training and how we are giving people their experience in the field of ABA through their field work becomes who they are in the field. And right now, a lot of students are not necessarily getting access or really high quality training. I'm not saying that's everyone, because I know there's lots of people who have put together a lot of great trainings for their organizations, but really just want to stress the importance of how they hold power and authority and what their responsibility is with that, and what our responsibility as behavior analysts are to setting them up for success and having a successful power transfer so that they can go out with confidence and go out and improve our field, because that's what we want. We want our students to be better than we are, right? And do more than we have done. And that is, what my ABA mentor is all about, is setting people up for success, and being able to have a really high impact on the field. So some reflection questions for you as we have talked about all this is, are you passing the power to someone who's prepared and competent in their field work? And are you able to adequately prepare your student to carry power and authority? Or are they going to get there and they're going to crumble and say, oh, this isn't my responsibility, when actually it is their responsibility? But they have to be prepared to carry the weight of that power and authority, and understand the importance of their job, and understand the impact and the influence that they have on their clients. Are you able to continue to support them after their initial training? This is really important, because nobody gets through school and does their experience and then they're, turn them over to the wolves and say, okay, bye, see you later. Hope you have a great career. Okay, so everybody needs mentorship and everybody needs help, especially in starting out. And, are you able to be that person for that staff long term to say, okay, I know you're new, like, ask me all the questions that you can. And, that's a difficult responsibility to hold, as a trainer. And so, you have to ask yourself, am I able to do that? Because that's the level of support that these people need as our students. And are you holding yourself responsible and accountable for the success or failure of your student entering the field? So, what if you get through someone's fieldwork experience and they really don't know what they're doing? And they aren't prepared to go out in the field. They aren't prepared to take on a new client. They're, for whatever reason, are you prepared to say, no, I'm not approving you to go into this field? Why? Because you need more training and you need more help and you need more mentorship, because you are accepting the responsibility of transferring that power and authority to the student. And it's your job to make sure that they are ready and prepared and able to fulfill the responsibilities of a behavior analyst at a very high level. Otherwise, we are only going to bring harm to the patients or the clients and the families that we see. So here's a little bit of information about us. You can scan our QR code. If you ask yourself these questions and you're like, yeah, I could really use help with this, and I want to, make sure that my, what I'm doing is working, and, how we can help you provide high quality training, you can go to myabamentor.com, and then, or you can scan the QR code, get our information. We do have several resources up there, so please look into us, and you can always email us and let us know if you have any questions, and we are happy to help you with getting your students prepared and ready to fulfill the job of a behavior analyst. So thank you.